There it goes. Okay, try that again. Sorry, my microphone was loading. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. Sego. We'll begin our meeting with a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples, the Mohawks of Akwesasne, the original keepers of this land. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Councillor Gardner, will you please lead us in the singing of our national anthem?
Native land, true patriot love, in all of us command, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Just wanted to provide a very quick update. I provided council with an update, and I also posted on my social media accounts that I had a meeting with Great Wolf Lodge a week ago today. Met with Stephen Jacobson, the Vice President of Development, and we went over the plans for the project, the next steps, and the City of Cornwall's investment in the infrastructure that will be required to support the project. He presented the City of Cornwall with the project book for our proposed water park. And the reason I want to mention this is because, I've heard from members of council, members of the business community and residents, there's a lot of rumors and rumor mongering going on in the community saying the project is canceled, it's not going to happen, et cetera, so forth. So I want to just reiterate that, things are happening, the project's moving forward, and, spreading rumors and things that aren't true really doesn't benefit anybody. And I don't see the goal of accomplishing that except creating a cloud of doubt around the city. So, I would encourage our residents not to fall into that trap and not to listen to everything they hear necessarily, and, trust the source it's coming from. Thank you. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Justin Towndale.
Present.
Councillors Claude McIntosh. Here. Dean Hollingsworth. Present. Sarah Good. Present. Caroline Hébert. Present. Councillors Elaine McDonald. Present. Sid Gardner. Ici. Denis Sabourin. Present. Todd Bennett. Present. And Fran Gunjo. Present. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to add that our CAO, Mathieu Fleury, is joining virtually. He felt sick earlier today and left. Any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda as presented? Madam Clerk, do you have any?
I do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Communication items?
There are none this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Councillor Gunjo, Councillor Gardner, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Any pecuniary interests? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council of Monday, January 8th? Councillor McIntosh, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Oh, discussion? No? Okay. All in favor? Yeah, carried. Thank you. Presentations and delegations.
We have one presentation this evening, Mr. Mayor, and that is our Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Tony Fleming. He's joining us virtually and will present the report that he has filed recently.
worship. Can you hear me?
I can. Welcome back to council, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, your worship. And through you, your worship, we have a report this evening. This is a report related to Councillor McIntosh. I will provide council with a very high-level overview, and then there are no findings of breach of the code of conduct contained in the report, so therefore there are no recommendations being made to council as there was no breach found. But I am happy to take questions from council if there are any. I'll just simply provide a high-level overview. This was a complaint, your worship, we received in June of 2023. It related to an article authored by the councillor. The article was dated June 17th. The nature of the complaint related to a suggestion that there was confidential information contained in the article itself. The section of the code at issue was section 5.1, which requires all members of council to hold in strict confidence all confidential information. And there's a definition of confidential information contained in the code of conduct. This was relevant to our process. We didn't obviously need to do much investigation to know what the article contained. That was published, so that was simply what we were looking at. Our concern was whether or not the contents of the article related to confidential information that would have found a breach of the code. While there was some sensitive and/or personal information contained in the article, after investigating and receiving information from staff, we found no evidence that the information was confidentially obtained by the member as a result of their role with the municipality. We weren't able to determine where the information came from, but we were satisfied that it did not come from a closed session of council. It was therefore not confidential information of the municipality or confidential information obtained by the member through their role as a member of council. And those are the essential elements necessary to find a breach of this section of the code of conduct. So on that basis, there was no breach of the code of conduct found, and therefore, as I indicated earlier, we are making no recommendations to council with respect to penalty. With that, your worship, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Are there any questions from council? I'm going to, if there's no questions from other members, I will give Councillor McIntosh an opportunity to speak. When I had my investigation, Mayor Clemma extended me the same courtesy, so I'm doing the same here based on previous precedent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Fleming. I'm going to offer some constructive criticism and just some observations. In the report, you mentioned that you couldn't find, nobody could determine where I got my information. It was pretty simple. I got it from the Daily Standard Freeholder and a pretty good reporter called Todd Hamilton who wrote the story. Basically, in the news business, they call that a matcher. It's when you get beaten by the other paper, you match it. And I was going with what Todd wrote, and I contacted two members of the Cornwall Police Association executive. They asked me, do you want the report? And I said, absolutely not. They'll think my son gave it to me. I just want you to confirm what Todd wrote is correct, and they said he was dead on. So that's where the information came from. It was 3 days after it was published in the Daily Standard Freeholder. There was some mention that I hadn't responded to an email on the 8th, I believe it was the July email, and therefore you had a 2-week window to respond, and I hadn't responded. That's in the report. I'll tell you why I hadn't responded. The email that came to me was from Mercedes Johnson, and it said City of Cornwall Code of, and it was cut off there. In there, the city gave, in the city email, a portion of the email, I was cautioned by IT. External email, caution, this email originated from outside the organization. Do not click on link or open attachment unless you know the person. I didn't know who Mercedes Johnson was. Another email that came with the final report was from Megan George. Same thing. All slug code of conduct, external email, caution, don't open this email unless you know the person. I did not know who Megan George was. In fact, I thought Mercedes Johnson was a friend of the person who filed the complaint. And I didn't, I had already gotten 4 or 5 letters of support, emails of support for that person, and I wasn't reading them anymore. So that's why I didn't read. I know you were just following the rules, and you gave me 2 weeks to respond, which, as of course I didn't see the email, so I couldn't respond. I would have, by the way. I wasn't ducking this issue. I'm just wondering, with that rule of 2 weeks, what would happen if I was off on a European vacation for 3 weeks, and I got that email from your legal assistant, and no response, so, okay, he's not interested in responding. I'm just wondering if there are any checks and balances that maybe your office would say, gee, he hasn't responded, let's give him a phone call. Just to improve.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm happy to respond to that. It's sometimes difficult for us to correspond by phone because we don't obviously have that contact information. I don't have the file in front of me in terms of follow-up communications. However, if to use your hypothetical of a vacation, I certainly have many occasions where members respond and say that they're away, they're not able to respond within that time frame, and we routinely grant extensions.
Yeah, but
it's unfortunate that it got caught in that.
Yeah.
That
I know you're
filter and
following
you
the
didn't
rules.
recognize the
The
firm
calls
name.
for a 2-week period, and you're just following the rules. But I think that rule should be adjusted somehow. If the Integrity Commission hasn't heard from the person maybe in a week and a half, and the deadline's approaching, we'll give them a call. I'll give you an example. My company pension plan, every year, I get a notice from them 3 months before in advance, and they tell me to prove that I'm alive, fill out the form, send it in, and then they'll send me another one. You're down to 6 weeks, and this year, for whatever reason, I thought I had sent it in, I hadn't, and 3 weeks before that deadline, I got a registered letter from the Royal Bank of Canada, or the people at Royal Bank that's handling my pension, notifying me that you've got 2.5 weeks to go. Please contact us and make it a registered letter when you send it to us. So that's how they operate. If they didn't hear from somebody, let's get in touch with them. I think that's a more prudent way of doing things, if you haven't heard from the person. The other thing, too, was that there's been some things when it comes to the police chief that for some reason this wasn't in the complaint, but it's a sideshow, that I was bullying the police chief. I had an axe to grind with her. I've had nothing but fantastic relationship with Shauna Sparrow. Every time I've called her, she's answered my questions. She's invited me to the office for coffee. And yet there's a group there that felt that because of that column, that somehow I had did her wrong. And I'm sure Shauna does not agree with that. I haven't heard from Shauna, but I'm sure she doesn't agree with that. I had a couple other notes here. Anyway, my daughter warned me, don't argue with the judge after he finds you not guilty. And she warned me with that tonight. And I said, no, he's a pretty good guy. But anyway, this thing, I think, got out of control. I noticed we can't name the complainant, can we?
No, sir.
Even though that complainant told everybody but the CBC that she was doing this.
I'm not going to give you advice on Zoom, sir, but I'm going to give you advice on Zoom, sir. Don't name the complainant.
Okay. I'm not. I don't intend to. I don't want to give that person any credibility. The complaint talked about how I use that column to advance the city agenda. I think that's what she meant. I want to tell you something about my column. If talking about the price of popcorn in 1957 at the Palace Theater is advancing a city agenda, it's a pretty weak column. I mean, it's not hard-hitting. It's a historical type thing. And every now and then, this thing comes along, and I write one like that the way I used to before I became a counselor. That's basically, just those points that I want to make, because I did not see those emails. Trust me, I would have responded to you very quickly with my point of view, where I got the information, and other things too. So I that's the one point I want to make, is that maybe in the future, you haven't heard from the person, maybe we better give them a call. And, if people can find me when the streets aren't plowed, I'm sure you could too. Anyway, just it's constructive criticism, and not criticizing your report. I could be happy with it, but that's just something that I felt that needs to be done. Because those emails, I would just follow. I didn't want Louis Sabard, our tech guy. I didn't want him to, the wrath of Louis after me, because I'm opening up emails that I'm not supposed to. So I was being extra cautious, which is a pretty good thing in today's world. So that's, the way I looked at it. But other than that, I have no problem with the report. One other thing, I don't know if you can answer. I sent your secretary an email this afternoon asking you to call me at home. Megan, George, I think. Anyway, there's one person in town, the village crank, who insists that I have a conflict of interest discussing anything to do with the police department. If the police come here and they want to talk about trafficking, human trafficking, I can't get involved unless I identify the fact that my son's a staff sergeant with City Police. That's the view I want. I want to get your opinion on that, because this person is not letting go of this.
We can certainly deal with that offline, sir.
That's what I want to hear. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion to receive the report and direct that it be posted to the city website, please? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Gardner, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk? Oh, sorry. Mr. Fleming, thank you again for your report this evening. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Have a good evening.
You too.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, are bulk consent reports. Request for removal of part lot control from Falcon Home Construction, Inc. on Lot 20 of Registered Plan 52M61, Belford Estate Subdivision. The action recommended is that Council approve the following: that part of lot control be removed from Lot 20 of Registered Plan 52M61, Belford Estates Subdivision, and B, that part lot control be reinstated on the semi-detached lots in the Belford Estates Subdivision once the subject lot has been created by the appropriate procedure. Item 2, RFP Terms of Reference 24P02, Engineering Consultants and Environmental Monitoring Services for Waste Disposal Sites and Snow Management Facility. The action recommended is that Council receive this report.
Council, motion? Councillor Bennett, seconder. Councillor Good, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
We have no reports from inquiries, Mr. Mayor. So moving on to our action reports. The first one is Cornwall Fire Services, with a recommendation that Council receive this report. And our Fire Chief, Matt Stevenson, is making a presentation to describe the report to us.
All right. Chief, when you're ready to go, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The report tonight is certainly a pleasure from a fire chief's perspective to present. It's an opportunity to reflect on the previous year. Just excuse me. We'll try this one. Hopefully it's better. It's an opportunity to reflect on the previous year. In this case, we're reflecting on the previous 4 years. An annual report hasn't been brought to council since 2019. So tonight we are bringing you information over the last 4 years with a concentration on what occurred in 2023 specifically. I do want to make mention of that first page with our fleet. I think certainly from a staff perspective, we are beyond proud of our fleet. And I think to Mr. Mayor and members of council, you should be too. This is state-of-the-art equipment. You have supported the fire service every budget cycle, every time we bring these large amounts before you and ask you to approve another fire truck without discussion, that occurs. And I want to pay tribute to that tonight. I think this is something that we as staff and council can be super proud of. I also want to make mention of the little car at the front right-hand side. So this is our first green fleet vehicle, fully electric. It is being utilized by our prevention department. And although perhaps when it arrived there was some apprehension, it is now the most highly sought after vehicle to utilize within travel, within our service, and the members are certainly proud to have it. We look forward to future investments in vehicles. I won't stand or sit here tonight and tell you that the fire trucks are next, although they do exist. I'm not quite ready to present that to council, probably for another few years. If we could move on. On behalf of the women and men of the City of Cornwall Fire Service, we are pleased to bring you this report summarizing the activities of the past year, but also looking to the future. The mission of the fire service is to protect the residents and visitors to the City of Cornwall. We accomplish this not only by responding to fires, but all emergencies where life, property, or the environment is in jeopardy. We are an all-hazards emergency services department with a high-performing team. Our staff are the key to our success, and I'm honored to lead this team. Our team's mission encompasses the 3 lines of defense, which are fire and life safety education, fire prevention and fire code enforcement, and emergency response. Our staff are our greatest asset, and as we move to the future, they will remain so. The City of Cornwall Fire Services is positioned for cautious, informed change. Emergency response will continue to be a primary purpose and focus. But the world of information management provides an opportunity to move forward and establish programs based on a strong foundation of fact and analysis. We look to the future as a risk-based entity, one that delivers emergency response programs based on analysis, reflection, and striving to achieve accepted standards while taking a stronger approach to public education, prevention, and value to the community. Our strength is in our people and their relationship with the communities we serve within the city, through emergency response and public involvement to achieve improved community safety and well-being. So I want to quickly remind council and our residents tonight, the Cornwall Fire Services is made up of 56 suppression firefighters, 3 prevention officers or public educators, and these are the 3 individuals who also do our fire code enforcement, 1 training officer who's responsible for providing all training for all members of the service, and 1 full-time mechanic. With me tonight is Deputy Chief Leighton Woods to my right and Deputy Chief Addison Pelkey. Deputy Chief Leighton Woods' portfolio includes emergency management, public education, fire prevention, and is the city's CEMC. Deputy Chief Addison Pelkey's portfolio includes operations side of the service, which is suppression, training, and the mechanical divisions. As City Council's aware, you have approved a new fire headquarters, which is well on its way. And I won't take time tonight to provide an update, but very soon I will provide an update to council on our journey through that construction project. And I'm sure as many of you have driven by it in the last months, we've seen a very distinct change on that property. And as that building is starting to take shape, although we are still a full 13, 14 months away from occupying, we are looking forward and very excited as we watch that building take shape. Cornwall Fire Services is committed to the health and safety of our staff and community and will manifest this commitment by proactively reducing risk and responding effectively and efficiently as needed. So just a quick overview of our organizational chart. We do have myself reporting to the Chief Administrative Officer. Below me is our Administrative Assistant, Sherry Delorme, who we certainly could not function without. As I mentioned, Deputy Chief Leighton Woods and Deputy Chief Addison Pelkey. Below you'll see the how I described earlier, Leighton Woods' portfolio being fire prevention and those individuals under that. And then we have our mechanical division, suppression division, and our training division. So, what do our members do on a day-to-day basis? And when is it our busiest time? When is our busiest month? And what is the busiest time of the day? So, what you'll see in front of you now is 2020, 2021 through 23, and those incidents, total incidents per year. You'll notice 2023, we had a total of 1,708 incidents, and which is the highest number of incidents over the last 4 years. Our busiest months, July and August. Busiest day of the week, Wednesdays. And what time? Between 3 to 4 and 5 to 6. And that is based on, again, just a reflection of the data from our CAD system when police dispatch us for service. Question that we get a lot, how many structure fires does the City of Cornwall get a year? So 2020 we had 32, 2021 we had 25, 2022 we had 32, and 2023 we had 20. We are trending in the right direction, and it would be a pleasure. This isn't something to be proud of. This isn't something that, you know, the higher the number, the better we are. If that number was 0, that would be something to celebrate. Looking at 2023, May was the most structure fires by month. Thursdays and Saturdays is when they occurred, and between 10 and 11 at night, and then 11 and 12 at night. And I guess for the most part, I don't think that's too surprising. Our response time. So this is the 90th percentile, 5 minutes, 47 seconds from the time that call comes in to the station to the time we arrive on scene. And that's, and again, without showing you maps of the city, that is the average 90% of the time. That is our arrival time from the time of incident. The time beside it, 10 minutes, 49 seconds. This is somewhat of a skewed number because this involves any call that we may have. So this is a complete mathematical equation of the 1,700 calls for the year, and many of those calls are not high priority or lights and sirens calls. So this is an average of all calls for service. Kind of a quick breakdown, and these are the majority or the higher numbers of calls. 32 outdoor fires, and that we say no loss, meaning that there was no, the fire was not permitted, but there was no loss as a result of that fire. 62 pre-incident or pre-fire incidents, and those could be pots on stove, cooking, lighting, fireworks, or other pre-fire conditions. 85 open-air unauthorized controlled burns, 365 false alarms, 26 vehicle fires, 165 public hazard responses, and those could be, as we refer to them, as motor vehicle collisions, entrapments, water ice rescue, or commercial or industrial accidents. 206 assist to other agency responses, and that can include mutual aid, a call for assistance from police, or automatic aid. and 153 medical incidents. And these could be looked at as drug-related calls or CPR incidents that the fire service responds to. Next page. So 2023, what did that look like for our service? So more than 40 firefighters engaged in 4 days of live fire training using the province's mobile live fire training unit. And this was the unit that was brought to Saunders, our training ground. And I believe some of council were able to come and view that unit. There is a picture below. Exams administered. 17 promotional class exams were completed, 2 platoon chief exams, and 1 training officer exam. Cornwall Fire Service conducted a 5-month recruitment class with 4 graduates. Cornwall Fire Service works with our partners. As part of these coordination efforts, we completed joint search and rescue training with Canadian Coast Guard, RCMP, OPP, and Akwesasne. 50 members participated in in-house hazardous materials operations course, or as we refer to it, HAZMAT, delivered by our in-house training team. And the fire staff completed over 60 training courses online from the Ontario Fire College, regional training centers, and the Fire and Emergency Services Training Center. And as I've spoken to council in the past, the province has provided us with a 2026 deadline to have all of our members certified, and we are on track with meeting that expectation. The next page is a quick glimpse of our, over the last 4 years, of our fleet and what's involved in that fleet. And the next page is what we're expecting in 2024. So along with other departments in the city, Cornwall Fire Services will be challenged by assisting vulnerable populations. Call volume is increasing, not in structure fires, but more in areas of substance-related medical response, alarms, near fires, and other rescues. Our intent is to mitigate the impact on the public through education, prevention, inspections, and code enforcement, thereby holding the line on call increases. While anticipating the challenges of the future, we keep in mind the need to protect residents and visitors, first by applying the 3 lines of defense, and then with a robust response when needed. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Chief. I see there's a few questions. Before we get there, can I just get a motion quickly to receive the report? Councillor Hebert, Councillor Dupel, questions? Councillor McDonald and Councillor Ngunjo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So you caught me off guard there when you said by 2026, all the firefighters need to be certified. So obviously that doesn't mean qualified, because they're qualified when they get the job. So what did I miss about the certification then? Is that's those courses that you mentioned that they took? A certain number of them are mandatory, or they're all mandatory?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McDonald. So the training program is split. So the province has put minimum requirements on, or certification requirements on, all fire services across Ontario. And they've provided, this is actually the second time they've done this. First time they didn't follow through and just stopped it and said, no, we're not going to move forward at this time. They came back a few years later and said, no, all fire services will comply, and 2026 is the deadline. So what we're doing is there's certain certifications in areas that it's not necessarily qualified, it's that there's exams written, and those certifications then become per member. And the province has listed, because we are such a wide range of response types, from hazmat to water rescue to elevator rescue, those requirements or certifications are much larger than another service that may just be involved in structure fires. So some of what you're reading, or what I've highlighted, is certification requirement. The other is just normal year-to-year training.
Okay. Thank you. And can this training be conducted here in Cornwall, or do people have to go away for this? Is there a central college that firefighters might attend?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor McDonald. So we did have the Ontario Fire College in Gravenhurst for many years, and our members would be sent there to be trained and certified. The province did close that, and that is one of the reasons why the city of Cornwall has been registered as a regional training center, and why the ask of staff to council for the not only the fire hall, but the upcoming actual training ground where we can train our own people on site and not have to send them away for courses anymore, but also invite the region around us to come and train on this site.
Now, is that training ground, is that at the new fire hall, or you mentioned at Saunders? It's gonna be-
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor McDonald, so the Saunders ground is pretty bare right now, so all we have the ability to do there is really if we bring in, for example, motor vehicle collisions and reenactments of collisions and using our auto extrication tools on an ad hoc basis. The live fire occurred there when the trailer was brought in to do our live fire processes. We utilize that space. But what I'm speaking of is an actual fixed units where we can actually create fire, almost the same as what this mobile live fire unit is, but a much larger scale.
And there, or at the new hall?
This will be at the new hall.
Okay, great. Well,
Yes.
that certainly justifies, a lot of people wonder why we're building another one and replacing an older one, but fact is, it's going to be more than what it's replacing.
Absolutely.
Good to hear.
Yes.
So my last question is, I was really surprised when I read this to hear that most of the incidents that you respond to happen in the summer. I would have expected in the depth of winter when everybody's maybe heating carelessly, so that seems counterintuitive. Why is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McDonald, I wish I had all the answers. I was surprised myself when we start, we go day to day and we look at our incidents and it just becomes, I won't say the norm, but some days are busier than others. But when you actually take the data and you start assessing it and you look at the time, some would say it should be busier in the winter when everybody's home. Summertime, people are away and those types of things. And maybe we're seeing with COVID and people at home more, we're seeing people around the house more often and staying around. And those incidents are just because people aren't traveling as much.
Okay, and I noticed false alarms it's a huge call volume, 365. I wondered if that happens more in the summer when maybe people aren't working. They've got time to dial a false alarm, whatever, or they're not in school.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McDonald. So this encompasses every large commercial, industrial, institutional building that has a fire alarm system. So any of those buildings that the fire alarm, we're mandated to attend. And so unfortunately, many of those times it is what we call a false alarm. We treat them as the real thing, but also included in there are, and at home as we require, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms in your homes. A lot of times those will go off, we'll attend, but there's no diagnosis. There's no carbon monoxide in the home where it's a false detector. So that would fall under that as well.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Gunjo next.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Chief, for this report. That is very informative. I have one question that I would like to discuss with you. In your report, you present that 25% increase. There's a 25% increase in the number of incidents between 2022 and 2023. Knowing that the number of residents in Cornwall is stable, what can explain such an increase in the number of incidents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nagunjo. I wish I had a qualified answer for you. When we start reflecting on the number of incidents and the types of calls, and we often talk about emergency services and we forecast just like we're going to do this week in budget, we're going to forecast what we believe is going to happen for 2024. But we certainly don't have control on what that those emergency calls will be. And so when we do use our best efforts, but I would have never been able to tell you a year ago that there would have been that difference or in call volume between those 2 years. And although we do our best, and when I look at the structure fires column, and we've, from 2022 to 2023, our number of structure fires went down by 12. I'd like to be able to tell you that's because of our public education. That's because we've started door-to-door door knocking after structure fires, so that when a structure fire happens in a neighborhood, we go and knock on every door around the circumference of that home within numerous blocks and talk to as many homeowners as we can. I'd like to be able to say it's because we sit at the Home Depot and tell people you need smoke alarms in your homes. Or our prevention team are out knocking on doors and doing inspections and identifying the number of non-compliance issues that we have. But I don't have a solid answer for you. It's the unknown. There are circumstances. It's like driving your vehicle. We don't know when that motor vehicle collision will happen. We don't know when that will occur. Is it a possibility? Yes, it's a possibility, and we try to prevent it as much as we can.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is more of a comment. For 20 years, I've sat around this table, except that I had a 3-year sabbatical because of this smoking bylaw. But kudos to you guys. For 20 years, I have asked why there were no women in the fire department. And I got no answer, never got an answer. Kudos to you guys that you finally have some women who have trained to be firefighters. Good job.
We're very proud of it, yes.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Guibert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report, Chief. You were just listing the number of reasons there might be fewer structural fires. Obviously, we don't know what. Could have just been a fluke, right? Could have just been all of these great programs they're putting in place. Could it also be the work of that joint committee that's been put in place around the poor housing stock and it was implemented when we were talking about the rental registry. I can't remember the name of the committee, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Could that, sorry? It was, no, it wasn't. Maybe you could tell us about it and tell me if that might be impacting some of this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hebert. And I absolutely would agree. I think with the Joint Task Force of Bylaw Enforcement, police, and our fire prevention staff coming together, we've done, and I would probably go over to Deputy Chief Woods, but he's going to yell at me because he wasn't prepared. But just the number of I'll look at hoarding calls.
Right.
So we as a service might go to and receive a call at a 4-plex, 3-plex, and it might just be for a combination smoke alarm. But our members go in and they can't even access the property because the hoarding is to such an extent. Our team, through that action team, will go and make an appointment with the landlord, go meet with that resident, and start working with them on reducing the risk. Because that's really what that is. That's a risk. If we turned and walked away and never dealt with it, we wouldn't, we're leaving it a risk. By returning with police, I'm sorry, the name, Cornwall,
CMHA?
Woods. CMHA, thank you, Cornwall Mental Health, and Cornwall Police, we have an ability to make change or have an effect on our residents who are just, and I will be honest, so many are just in need of help and they don't know how to ask for it. So the number and the number is astonishing and certainly maybe something we can add for future reports, but just the number of properties that we affect change, to your point, I would suggest also adds to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I know that it is something that I was really looking forward to hear a little bit more about, so maybe it would be interesting to get a report on an annual basis on on that specific joint task force and how many residents it's supporting and households, just to
For sure.
put it out there to the universe, maybe it'll come back at some point. And then just a question on some numbers. The total incidences on page 5 of your report is just a little over 1,700. And then on page 6, where you're elaborating on some of the higher causes of incidences, there's just shy of,
About 1,100.
1,100, right? And so there's a 614 incident difference. I'm just curious what those are.
For sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hebert, I was hoping one of the councillors was going to ask me that question.
Okay.
So because when we get calls for service, the incident numbers are vast. I would look to Deputy Chief Pelkey, but I think there's in the range of about 60 different call types. That's correct. That when dispatch is dispatching us, that call for service falls into one of those 60. I didn't want to consume 60 types of calls.
Right.
What's missing are grass and rubbish fires, gas leaks, fluid leaks. Last year, we had 149 calls for down power lines. It's those types of calls that I will say are not necessarily miscellaneous, but don't capture what our norm is or the majority.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure they weren't sort of forgotten.
That the chief forgot how to add.
No. I assumed it was like miscellaneous, but it's
For sure.
just interesting to hear what they might be. So
Yep.
thank you for that.
No problem.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. Awesome fleet. I know my son would be absolutely stoked if he could have that. I'm sure your entire force is very excited about it. I'm glad that Councillor Hebert brought up that discrepancy because I was doing the math myself and wondering where those missing numbers were. I'm just curious about gas and rubbish fires because when I think of especially like unauthorized burning, I think, the really problematic in my estimation seems to be gas and rubbish. Do you have a number for that one?
I don't have an exact number.
All right, that's okay. I'm curious to know, in regards to the medical incidents, obviously you indicated here there's an increase in drug-related calls. Now, is that, and my assumption is, and we know the trends in terms of like the opioid crisis is out of control, but is this the trend is everywhere, or is this that fire services have been involved in more of these calls in the last 2 years than previous years? Why is it that fire services are involved in these calls now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Good. And tonight we're fortunate to have fire and paramedics annual reports, and certainly the chief of paramedics will be able to probably speak to more of those types of calls. But we've entered into what we call a tiered response with paramedic services, and there's criteria. We don't attend for every call for EMS. We only, there's a certain criteria that we will actually attend, and a lot of those, or the majority, are vital signs absent, or what we call VSA, and so it's simply time matters. That's if you want to, there's a whole pile of reasons of good things of what comes out of the tiered response agreement, but at the end of the day, it's time matters, and if we're able to get there 1 minute earlier than EMS and start first aid or start some sort of treatment, there's a better chance of survival. So that those and the call volume, and I think the chief of paramedics will be able to speak. The call volumes have increased exponentially, and we're seeing that year over year of those types of calls, and unfortunately, I think there's a whole number of reasons of why we're seeing that, but that's what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, well, great, and I'm glad you brought up the hoarding because that is a big issue. We know it's an issue in our community, so I'm glad that there's such a proactive effort and a collaborative effort to deal with that. It's wonderful, and I'm happy to see that in the next report there's some of these patients are being brought back to life who are not showing any vital signs, so that's very promising. Thank you so much. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Chief. Can't think of the incident report, the cat in the tree, firefighters come and save the cat. You don't have any of those, do you?
I purposely left those off, Councillor Mashnash.
The 5 minute and 47 second response time, that's an average.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McIntosh, that is, it's how we refer to it as a 90th percentile, so 90% of the time, that's the numbers,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, there's been some debate over where the new station's located. There's been suggestions that it's going to take a lot longer to go to the east end of the city. With that, when you say 5 minutes, 47 seconds, is that both stations arriving at a major fire, or is that the first station to get there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the first responding pumper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then seconds after depending on the call, other fleet will arrive depending on the needs assessment.
Okay. Wait, you have any idea? I know you know where the most fires are in the city. Is there one area that when you had the map with the red dots? Where would the red dots be?
So, Cornwall Fire currently, as council is aware, you approved us to proceed with the fire master plan, and Councillor Sabarin is sitting as a council member on that committee, and we're nearing the end, and we're going to be able to bring that report to council likely the first meeting in March. And in that report, it's also going to talk about a number of these calls and where our number of structure fires are, where the majority of responses are. To your question, as far as structure fires, we do tend to have the majority within our East End properties. Although they, on average, they have been scattered throughout the city as well. But if you were to plot and look at the red dots, certainly within that 20 that we had in 2023, a higher percentage within that East End.
We have 7 trucks. 3 at the east end, 4. Is that how it works?
So currently, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have an engine and a rescue that dispatch out of fire headquarters. We have an aerial and a pump that dispatch out of second station. We have 1 backup aerial, and we have 2 backup pumps.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a bylaw? They have to have smoke alarms?
It's a provincial requirement.
Provincial requirement.
Yes.
Have we laid charges? Do we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and we do. With regards to stats, we've actually within the first quarter of the first few weeks of this year, we've probably laid close to 6 charges already. Some of those multiple charges per residence. The December of last year, we laid 12 charges within 1 building. So to answer your question, yes, we are proactive with enforcement.
Here's what I hear from some landlords, that tenants take the batteries out, they use them for something else. Do you hear that?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's unfortunate, and we've actually
Set that up on purpose? Hey boys, fire it up.
I hit the button.
Quick, send me a text.
Certainly, I think we try to educate, and we've actually done a couple education sessions for the landlord association, where we've asked, have your tenants sign a piece of paper, go visit them yearly, have your tenants sign a piece of paper that as of this day, at this time, your smoke alarms and CO alarms were operational. When we attend and they're not, we know that the landlord's done their due diligence. That what we call absent landlords, that's not what we're dealing with in that case. Yeah. That we can go back and we can look at the tenant and share responsibility to the tenant for why that occurred.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of receiving the report? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Our second action report is the 2023 Paramedic Annual Review. And here to present it is Chief Bill Lister.
Chief, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So this is the 2023 annual report for paramedic services. So this starts at the beginning of the 2023 budget, where the goals and objectives were outlined in the narrative of the budget. So we had 5 objectives in 2023, which included meet legislative responsibilities, build hospital avoidance strategies, build mental health resiliency within the paramedic group, recruit and retain paramedics, and work to improve our PAD program. So the first slide, I'll just take a step back, deals with legislative responsibility. So in paramedic services, you'll see that there's counties listed here. So we're a shared service, so we service the entire area of Cornwall and Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. So it's about 3,000 square kilometers that we're responsible for as the primary provider for ambulance services, land ambulance services. We have nothing to do with air ambulance or the helicopters. So some of this is the legislative responsibility. And what I'd like to draw your attention to here is the call volume increase. So across the counties, the call volume level stayed pretty much consistent except for the Cornwall area. We have bases in every one of those counties. The Cornwall base isn't specific to Cornwall area proper, but it really is about 10 minutes in the general jurisdiction around. So some of those calls are things like Long Sault or that type of call. Because we code by base to figure out the utility rate and the functionality of it all. Overall, our call volumes are increasing about 4% per year, which is higher than our age or our population growth. And that adds a fair bit of pressure to it, but meeting our response times, we have a legislative responsibility that's called the response time plan. Next slide, please. So the one that's most public facing, so there's a lot of legislative responsibilities within paramedic service, but the response time plan basically says predict what you think you can respond to in a reasonable way and then measure to that response time. There's 5 levels of response time. I'll go through the first 3 with you. The other 2 aren't time sensitive, so we won't spend much time on that. But if you look here, response times for sudden cardiac arrest. This is a legislative responsibility where we must measure what we're doing with sudden cardiac arrests. And did we meet our criteria? So our criteria was get there under 6 minutes, 30% of the time. So overall, the end result, the final grade was 27.78% of the time. Cornwall did extremely well, 50% of the time, and the other areas did not so well. But I draw your attention to the frequency of the call. So in Cornwall, we had high call volume on that, and in the rural areas, you had less call volume. Some of that is related to because Cornwall has a hospital and the ambulance tend to gravitate towards around the hospitals, the response times in those areas where the ambulances are coming and going from have better response times. So Cornwall, just by the nature of having the largest hospital in the United Counties, has more ambulances around it because they attract the ambulances. No matter where we pick up, they'll either come to this hospital. There's 3 in the area, and there's Cornwall, there's one in Alexandria and one in Winchester. So we have to go to the closest hospital by legislation. When they leave, that's the result. All of these calls, sudden cardiac arrest means you were standing and then you weren't. Your heart stopped while it was witnessed arrest. Okay, it's different than a vital signs absent. We don't know that until we either get the report or we have a witness result of the. So the incidences are very small on that, less than 0.1% of our total call volume. We do about 260 vital signs absence call responses per year, which is CTAS 1. So I'll just move on to the CTAS 1 slide. Whoops, you're 2 slides ahead of me. There, thank you. So CTAS 1 is resuscitation. This is very time sensitive. We must respond under 8 minutes. Paramedic on scene under 8 minutes. We were trying to do that 50% of the time, and we met the legislative responsibilities for that. You can see the breakout across. Akwesasne isn't in our area, but we do respond to calls in that area, so we put that up as a kind of reminder that we do cross the bridge and do calls in Akwesasne. So that we do fairly well. Your partners or your counterparts in the counties constantly ask for better response times, and that's brought together in this when we present budget, saying they want improved response time. Most of the time, the response time is a requirement for increasing in staffing. We're traveling too far between calls is the bottom line of why we don't have a better response time on that. Next slide, please. CTAS 2 calls are high potential of becoming life-threatening calls, and we meet a response time plan there as well. Then the next 3 slides are CTAS 3, 4s, and 5s. Those are not life-threatening calls if we can delay them. We purposely delay the code 3, the CTAS 3, 4s, and 5s, so that we can make sure we have enough resources available to do the sudden cardiac arrest 1s and 2s. It's a lot of legislative responsibility to report time on them, but there's no significance to the call. So they're there for your enjoyment if you wish, but we don't really spend a lot of time worrying about how long it took us to get to those types of calls. Like I said, there was about 18,000 calls we responded to, which is an increase of 4% overall. 2 slides more, thank you. Okay, so trying to address some of the mental resiliency and maintaining legislation. We did 2,760 hours of training. That's the instructor standing in front of the class training. That's not the total population that had to attend training. So that's quite significant number of training. And listed below are the types of training that was taking place. A lot has to deal with how to better deal with patients. A lot has to deal with how you avoid the hospital altogether. So things like seizure. For the first time ever, we don't have to transport some seizure type calls to the hospital. We can treat and refer, it's called now, instead of going to an emergency department. There's a whole emergency department strategy. As you all are aware, emergency departments are over capacity. They run at about 115% of what they're built to handle. And they just don't have the capacity to handle ambulances lining up at the door. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is some of the work that has been done in 2023 as far as training. Now, on top of this training, or included in that number of training, we also did mental resiliency training. It was called vicarious trauma, which every paramedic, 100% of them, we run about 143 of them, males and females, and which we're trying to teach them resiliency in the paramedic world. We see a high loss of paramedics to WSIB claims related to mental wellness. We kind of lost the slides, but I'll carry on. So to stay current with legislative responsibilities, there was 3 new medical directives that we had to implement with through the province. That's treat and discharge, which means we treat on scene and we send them on their way. That's mostly known diabetic calls, just to bring it down to the grassroots level. I talked about treat and discharge with a seizure, and we now can do treat and discharge with, that's basically called atrial fib. And if you have any parents over the age of 80 or anybody you know over 80, 1 in 2 of them will be in atrial fib. So we can manage asymptomatic those types of calls to stay out of the emergency department. We also have 3 new drugs that we give, which relates to budget, province mandates. And the province basically does it by evidence-based application. So they look at what we can do in the field so that we can help patients before they arrive in emergency departments. So there's 3 new drugs that we administer, and it works really, really well. This is a real win in our area. So the first drug is for 65-year-olds. They do better on this drug with nausea and vomiting. Our COPDers, which is a huge part of our population, do better on that drug. And we have oxytocin, which is really helpful with births, but we do so few of them that we hardly spend any time on that. Sorry. So there's more legislative updates on, and there's just a quick list there. If you, one more slide, please. These are updates to the existing medical directives. The way the ambulance world works is a physician. It's not a single physician, it's a body. It's a medical advisory committee, studies what works in the field, and they come out with orders. And they're orders, so you have to follow the order as they're prescribed, and these are the 9 that have updates to them. So that's a fair bit of training. I just spend a few more minutes talking about our recruitment and our PAD. So I'll start with the PAD component. That stands for Public Access Defibrillation, or CPR. So there's a chain of command which basically speaks to the survivability of a person who has a sudden cardiac arrest, and they know rapid CPR. Well, it starts with rapid identification. So if we can train people to recognize the signs and symptoms of a heart attack before they collapse, they'll do better than somebody who has collapsed. And those who have collapsed do better if they can get a defib, a shock, or CPR started ahead of time. And that's part of why there's a tiered response agreement with the fire department. Every minute that goes by, you lose 10% viability, roughly, on it. So at 10 minutes, there's pretty much not a lot the survivability rate won't change much. So we really promote CPR and defibs, and that's all the defibs you see hanging in the buildings. Any municipal building in SDNG has a defib in it, and we manage the program on it. So just some quick numbers. We did roughly 223 medical VSAs. We did 13 traumatic VSAs. The interesting number is 13 of those. It doesn't sound like a lot, but actually it's a fairly high number. 13 of them had a return of spontaneous circulation, which means they had no heart rate and then they had a heart rate. So they're in effect alive when we left them. That doesn't talk to outcome after the hospital. So a true save is the patient has to leave the hospital without deficits. We lose track of them once they're in the hospital, so we only can report on how many went into the hospital with a heartbeat. Following no heartbeats at all, okay? So that's a fairly significant part of response. And remember, it's 0.1% of our total call volume. Some of our biggest challenges on response time is we call it offload delay, which is you arrive at the hospital and the hospital's too busy to accept the patient, so we wait in the hallways. You hear about this on the news all the time. In the 3 hospitals in SDNG, the offload delay is quite small. When we head outside of SDNG, the offload delay gets astronomically large. We do about 1,600 calls where we end outside of our SDNG area, and the average, not the 90th percentile, the average is over 2 hours. We have offload delays of full shifts in those. A shift is 12 hours long. So we're doing shift changes not at base or anywhere else we have to go. Now remember, sometimes they get the call halfway through their shift or near the end of their shift, and we try and get them home. So it's a hospital issue. It's easy to push it that way. The hospitals are trying to deal with the issue. The Auditor General just came out with a report, if anybody read it, that identified offload and wait time in emergency is where you need to focus, which is a lot of screaming and jumping down and stomping our feet to say, you know, this is an issue. It's gaining traction. So normally when an Auditor General makes a report, the Ministry of Health has to respond to it. So we're anxious to see activity towards that, to see response times change. Meanwhile, we, with increasing call volume and no changes to offload delay, we have to increase staffing. So you'll see in the 2024 budget, there's a request for more fleet, which will happen in 2024. And there's a whole supply chain issue going on with that, which is we need to initiate now. Unfortunately, it should go to council, but we have to order so quickly because there's 2 or 3 year delay to get an ambulance now that we order now, and that's changed in 2 years. It used to be you could order in the spring, pretty much right at the end of a budget session, and you would get it in the fall. Now you order this year and you'll get it 2 years and a bit from now. It's really hard to get the vehicles. And then the other part is the human beings that need to fill the colleges are producing as many paramedics as they can. It's not enough. There are at least 200 graduates short on rough estimates on how many they need to just maintain the growth rate. So it's a bit of a challenge to, you can have a vehicle and no people, or people and no vehicle. So it's a combination of the two that you have to really work. So we've been really proud that in 2023, we had we recruited 16 paramedics, which one was an advanced care. And we've retained 15 of the 16 of them, which is a really good number. We've never done that before. We have 3 new advanced care paramedics. So there's 2 levels of paramedics, primary care and advanced care. So we've increased by 3. The value in that is the critical thinking that they can do. So more advanced care in the future will lead to less need to transport to a hospital. So the more we get, the more we'll be able to treat right in the home. And just some backstory here. This goes back a little deeper than 2023, but we've had a major changeover in our staffing. We have roughly 8 people who are administrators or managers. We've replaced 7 of the 8 in the last 2 years. So we went from a lot of experience to lots of energy and enthusiasm. Just some other, we've had 5 people reach their 20-year exemplary service medal, and 1 got their 30-year. And that oxytocin question, we delivered 1 baby in 2023, which was a happy moment. We normally have to deal with such terrible circumstances most of the time. That's a good news story. So overall, I think we did a reasonable job of meeting the objectives of 2023. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Before we get to questions, just need a motion to receive. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Sambray, questions? Okay, I'll start speakers list. I'm going to start with Councillor Gardner, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Goodjoe, Councillor Weber. Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't falling asleep, I was just reading something. Question number 1. We tried to bring P2 paramedics to the college in Cornwall, and we weren't able to do that at one point for $80,000. Are we training P2 paramedics now here in Cornwall?
No, we're not. The college wants to, but it's more complicated than just asking the college to do it. So the universities and colleges, ministry decides who can do what to whom. And so St. Lawrence is not a registered college for that level. So the 4 that we used this year included La Cité in Ottawa, Algonquin in Ottawa. I think those were the only 2. Sometimes there's Durham that does it as well, but we aren't able to do the.
That's a big loss as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I can remember back then, it was for $80,000 that the program was killed, the P2 program. Second, wait times. On the news recently, they've been talking about leaving a paramedic at the hospital rather than using the ambulance paramedics. So how does that look for the future? Because it seems to me that would really eliminate those long wait times.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in Ottawa, so I'll start locally. In the local hospital, the one that gets the most volume is Cornwall Community Hospital. And they've done a little bit of a twist on that. So the program you're describing is called an offload nurse, which is specific to that. Get the patients off the paramedic stretchers, and so they create a small waiting room and they deal with it. It's very specific. There's criteria like they can't be cardiac monitored, they can't be on an IV, you know, that type of thing. In Cornwall, instead of the paramedic service using paramedics, the hospital has hired 3 of them directly to work in the emergency departments. The kind of the backstory on that is they can go deeper into the hospital if they're employees of the hospital instead of employees of the ambulance service. So that's working really well. In the Ottawa area, they use multiple programs and still struggle. So they use this thing called offload nurses in Ottawa. They also use this thing called a paramedic patient ratio. So they train paramedics to manage more than 1 patient at a time. We kind of do that not in a formal sense, but when we have a real bottleneck, we'll start batching people together and they'll start managing more than 1 patient at the same time. So both those programs are running in Ottawa.
And hopefully they'll be more efficient at some point in time, because why I brought this up was because in Ottawa, they're having, when we're sending one of our ambulances with one of our patients to Ottawa, then are they efficient enough to get our ambulances out? Because once they're out of the area, we can't use them if they're stuck there in a blockade.
That's exactly right. So there's 2 broad categories of call that we do where they end in Ottawa. The first one is bypass, where we don't stop at the closest hospital. We're legally allowed to bypass that hospital because the definitive treatment is at the hospital in Ottawa. Those are really super time-sensitive calls, and we go right to the surgery bed or wherever they're going. So strokes and heart attacks and trauma are the 3 that we bypass the hospital. Our local hospitals that end up there, those ones get transferred off really quickly, like under 15 minutes. Everything else, unless we have a bed designation, it goes to emergent, we wait in line with everybody else. So of the 1,660 calls, approximately, probably about 1,000 of them, we wait in line more than 2 hours. Those are rough numbers.
I'm not going to blame anybody for that, but I know where the cause is. So thank you very much for the answers.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to thank you, Mr. Lister. You've got a tremendously impressive page of statistics here that certainly support your call for hiring 8 new paramedics, and I certainly support that. My question has to do with another really impressive statistic here, and that is that in 36% of the occasions, citizens were able to administer cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which led to a good outcome. That's in the 2nd paragraph. And so my question is, how aggressively do you market training sessions, or, I mean, I wouldn't know how to use a defibrillator, and I'd hate to think that I'd have to stop and read the directions while somebody was dying beside me. So I hope you'll have some really strong promotion of courses, and you'll deliver them, and maybe even engage Kojikos so people can just watch TV and at least get a working familiarity with how the machines work and how to use them. Because obviously, 60% of the cases, the citizens had the know-how and jumped in and.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're approaching this in a number of ways. So we're starting CPR training, and we're starting, so most people who have cardiac arrest are having them at home. The first person to find them is their family. It sounds in a roundabout way, but an easy way of reaching those people is to train our staff, because with a population base as big as we are, we're likely to hit somebody in a home that will do it. So we're starting internally, where we're trying to offer 2 CPR courses a month. It will be registered through, like you would for swimming lessons and so on. You register, you get taught CPR. We're trying to expand that out to, well, all CPR now teaches how to use a PAD, so it would be an easy learn, and it's not hard. It's, if you can put a Band-Aid on, you can use a defib. And we do specialized classes for opium overdose as well. We can't give the kits, but we can teach how to use the kits, so we're trying to do that as well. We've had a 20% increase in opiate overdoses over the last
How will we know? Like, if I want to take one of these courses, is it going to be?
Very shortly, you should just be able to go onto the city website and look for CPR,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you can register, and we'd be more than happy to teach you.
Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Gunjo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. That was very informative. You had a lot of information in. Even that, I have one question. The report states that the ambulance service covers the city of Cornwall and the counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, which overall has an approximate population of 140,000 people. How much and in what proportion do these neighboring community contribute to the ambulance service expenses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So several years ago, there was a shared services agreement struck between the county council and city council. It's based on a weighted assessment of where you live when you get the call. So approximately around 60% of the total ambulance bill is paid for through the counties, and approximately 40% is paid through the city. Related to that question, we get grants from the province. It's roughly 50% of the cost of the ambulance delivery is paid through the province, and the other 50% is paid through the tax base. So the city of Cornwall is paying 25% of the bill, roughly, to run the ambulance services.
Thank you very much for your answer. So roughly, just to clarify, the city of Cornwall subsidizing the cost of the counties?
No, it's the other.
Okay.
It's a fair assessment. Like, the ones that use it pay for what they use.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hébert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Lister, for still providing exceptional service in really challenging environment, especially with workforce shortage and all of that. So very well done. I guess I want to continue on some points mentioned on the opioid crisis and whatnot, and seeing 20% increase, and knowing, I think last year when we talked about it at budget, there was an increase over the previous year, and so it just keeps rising. And I may have asked this before, but are we seeing, or are you seeing a lot of folks who have had naloxone administered to them before you arrive on the scene?
It's fairly anecdotal because I don't have any statistics on, like, there's no checkbox to
Right.
say was naloxone administered ahead of time. Depending on the clientele that we're dealing with, there's naloxone boxes all over the place. So we know they're getting administered before we get there. Some of the culture between opiate overdose is we don't want to be involved, so they'll administer phone and then there's nobody there when we arrive. We just
Right.
see the evidence that naloxone was administered. That's the best I can do
Okay.
as far as, I can't tell you 20% or.
It'd be interesting to know, because I know there's been an extra push in the community to train more people, whether it be, frontline workers or just general people in the community, users, whatnot. So it'd be interesting to know. I'm not adding another checkbox to your reporting, but just, I've always wondered, knowing there's been an increase in interest in the training. And on that note, I just want to clarify, so in the CPR training that will be offered to city staff, are you looping in naloxone in there automatically, or is it, that's just a secondary training that might be offered?
If there's a service-specific request to have it taught, we can teach it.
Could we just add it in? Because it's not, I know that it's not a lengthy like you could
It isn't
probably do it in
lengthy,
10
yeah.
minutes, right? Stick it in the nose, press it, it doesn't work, do the other one.
Call 911.
Call 911, yeah.
So we try and follow, so we're trying to be WSIB certified with CPR, and to do that, you have to follow a course curriculum that's established. It doesn't have naloxone training in the CPR
Interesting.
curriculum, but we can add it in. It doesn't diminish
Okay.
from the course, so we set it up to follow the curriculum, but we can do an add-on on it.
I think especially we have facilities that are open to the public. And, we never know when this could be happening. So it'd be really interesting to have anyone who is servicing public, or really anyone, we don't know when and where this can happen, right? To see if all staff can be trained and then have access to naloxone kits everywhere. I have one in my purse, I have one in my car. They are, I know that Respect RX Pharmacy are just handing them out. And so you mentioned that you can't distribute them, but there are partners in the community that are very much happy to distribute. So I'd love to see that implemented over this next budget year. I don't know if maybe I'll bring it up again at budget. I do know sometimes through Respect RX, if you are a corporation, you have to pay a certain fee for kits, but they're life-saving, right? So I think it'd be really worthwhile.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So an easy answer, and to stay out of the budget lines, the pharmacies can give it away for free.
Right.
So if part of the training is, here's naloxone, how you use it, if you wish to carry the kit, go to a pharmacy and ask for one. That's just as simple as it gets. And then you can carry a kit.
Yeah, I just worry that folks might not go out of their way to go to a pharmacy, right? If we leave a bunch in every, anyways, we can probably discuss it further, but I would love to see them in all the departments. They're so easy to use, and even if you are administering naloxone on someone who's not having an overdose, it's not going to harm them if you're really not sure. So anyways, I just would love, I hope administration is taking note, would love to see that implemented across our departments. Thank you.
Mr. CAO?
Yeah, thank you, and great question. And it is a evolving landscape. I think obviously we have the chief with us today, and with the substantive update, particularly in most recent questions on the AED portion, it is a kind of a question relating to emergency response and how can we empower the community with the knowledge and skills to support it, support our response, support positive outcomes. But I also, too often, I don't hear enough about the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. And we really need the leadership of all of our health responders, hospitals, Eastern Ontario Health Units, and paramedics to coordinate an effective response. And glad to see pharmacies are able to do that. But I think it's certainly a conversation that we'll need to engage in. And I don't see it necessarily as a budget item. I just think it's a coordination element.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Quick question, Chief. So if I'm having a cardiac arrest, the quicker somebody's taking care of me, the greater chance I have of surviving, correct?
That's correct.
Now, have you ever heard of municipalities passing legislation that obliges public facilities, not just government-owned, but let's say the Cornwall Square, for example, to have defibs on the premises? Is there any kind of legislation out there, either provincial or municipal,
So
to
there's,
oblige people to do that?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a, it's called the Defibrillation Act, which mandates municipalities to manage, if they have a PAD program, to manage it. It doesn't extend out to private property or residents. There's a whole lot that can happen to kind of push in the direction that you're wanting. We haven't got that in place yet. There's these things called Neighbor Saving Neighbors programs, which are, they use a app that says, you know, your neighbor is, there's a call in your neighborhood,
Right.
can you run across the street kind of thing. We don't have any of that in place yet.
Right. So I guess what I'm thinking is that we have a bylaw that says you have to have a smoke detector and a carbon dioxide detector in your home. Now, I realize it's not realistic to think people are going to have defibs in their homes, but when I think of, let's say, Walmart, for example, to say you guys have to have X number of defibs based on some kind of square footage, is that even realistic to pursue? Would be something that, like, no municipality's tried that yet.
None that I know of.
Okay, thanks. I'll let me just percolate that for a while. Thank you, Your Worship.
Further questions, comments?
Point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Microphone, please, Councillor Gardner.
Point of information, you talked about CPR. I took a course with the Red Cross, and they're available if, I don't know if they are now, but that's where I took my courses, both defib and heart attack. So that place is open.
Councillor Good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And I wanted to just build off, and I don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole here, but I wanted to build off what Councillor Bear was discussing in terms of naloxone and the kits. There's a lot of stigma, of course, around drug use, mental health, of course, around opioid usage. But now actually obtaining those kits themselves, I actually had obtained one at an event down at Lamoureux Park from Respect RX Pharmacy, and no big deal. They just give it to you. Now, I had heard from someone who I think maybe obtained one from the hospital or potentially from a pharmacy, that when they had obtained them, it looked like their name went into a system. And so they had indicated to me, and this was a professional at my previous employer, a child protection worker, so it was a very, sensitive thing to have, and obviously a useful tool to have with you in the case that you should need it. And this person had said to me that when they had gone to seek care, that it was in their medical file, and there had been an assumption by the person treating them that they had had an opioid or substance use issue. Do you know any information about that? If it's real, I want people to know, and if it's wrong, I'd like to dispel the myth.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a program that we use for hospital avoidance. It's called the Community Paramedic Program. They do about 7,000 calls. In that program, a paramedic who's working as a 911 medic, who comes across a case where they believe there's high risk in a home, can refer the home to the CP people who do a visit, and they do train the family on how to use a naloxone kit if they so choose to elect to do it. I know it's in our records, but our records are internal. It wouldn't be on a hospital chart that I know of. When we touch a patient, that sounds wrong. When we treat a patient, we do complete an ambulance call report. It goes to the hospital. They have free and full access to whatever's written on that form. So there might have been some sort of communication in that way, but Normally, they wouldn't write naloxone kit, they would write like opiate overdose or history of opiate use or something like that. So other than that small vein of, a referral to CP programs for some management, I don't know where that would come from.
Well, that's good, and I hope we can, collectively reduce the stigma around drug use and around being safe in that regard. So, thank you, and I hope it's not something that would ever affect someone adversely to obtain that kind of kit.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to make a quick comment on Councillor Hollingsworth asking about making these DFIBs kind of mandatory for public spaces. I can tell you that there are a lot of businesses that are proactively doing it. My store, for one, has one at the front. I know lots of other stores have them as well. And typically, you can recognize which places or businesses have them by a little sticker they have on the window saying that there is a unit on site. So I think just a lot of businesses are understanding the responsibility of having these things on site, and they are important because we've had to use ours once, and it saved someone's life. So I think any business out there that has a significant amount of people going through their doors are probably considering it now if they don't already have one.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of receiving the report? Carried, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Our next action report, Mr. Mayor, is Council Strategic Priorities Operation Plan. And here to present is Katie Wells, Director of Government Relations and Corporate Priorities.
Ms. Wells, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. So what you have in front of you today is the second subsequent report to the January 8th report on the strategic plan. The report you have in front of you today is an operational plan. So what you'll see is the elements of the democracy reflected in this report. We've also cross-referenced those items verbatim at the bottom of the report so Council can find them throughout. So if you look at these two reports in tandem, the January 8th as well as the one in front of you, what that does is really provide an overall view of the session that took place on November 4th, reflecting Council's priorities and thoughts, and then some concrete action items that staff will take to actually roll out those priorities and Council's vision. So I'm very happy to answer any questions or inquiries that Council may have.
Councillor Hebert, then Councillor Gunjo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love the operational plan. I love to see the detail and the action items, and I think this is what we were looking for when we met last. I have a couple questions on that, but I want to talk about the mission and the vision. So I think it's a really good start. I just feel like there's a piece missing around quality of life. It seems a little corporate, and I get it. We are a corporation, but I think first and foremost we are a community that is serving its residents, and hopefully in a way that they are thriving for a better quality of life. I feel that specifically in the mention of business. So providing where residents and businesses are provided with XYZ. And so I feel like maybe we can take that a step further. And instead of businesses, it may be, because I feel like we just say businesses, we may be forgetting some partners. So I'm thinking service clubs, nonprofits, charities, youth groups, beyond just the businesses, the for-profit organizations. I feel like we can include businesses within the word partners. So I don't know if there's a similar feeling around the table, but I thought if we could do, I wrote a few versions out that I think would still very much have the same tone in the existing mission. In the vision. The mission's fine. It's just the vision where it could sound something like, Cornwall is a diverse and progressive community where residents and partners thrive through access to, and I think thriving adds a little bit of that, residents and partners are living to their best possible quality of life. Thrive through access to financially responsible and sustainable municipal services and infrastructure that are rooted in a commitment to a strengthened quality of life, and where all feel welcome and safe. So it still very much keeps everything that's there, changes businesses to partners, but adds a bit more along the lines of that quality of life that I think is our priority for the residents of our community. I don't know if there would be support in changing some of that language from the partners, from the colleagues around the table. I know some people don't really put a lot of stock into missions and visions and values, but some do. I do. I think they're critical to organizations, especially organizations that are serving almost 50,000 people, lots of partners, lots of businesses. So I don't know if there would be willingness to make an edit. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so I don't know how we could go about this. I have a motion, maybe, to amend the current, or the proposed vision. I also have another version I could read that may be more simplified. Cornwall is a diverse and progressive community that values a strong quality of life for all residents and partners that are provided provided with financial responsible and sustainable municipal government, and then the rest is the same. So it either puts the values strong quality of life at the beginning, or kind of at the end, that we're providing our services that are rooted in commitment to strengthening quality of life, or to a strong quality of life. Like, we don't have to land on the words right now, but I just feel like we do need to land on the words. Okay, I just feel like that might be missing. So I don't know. I'll make that motion, and maybe we can hear some counselors and their feedback, and then we can come together on something that we all support.
So, Councillor Hebert, are you making a motion?
Yes, I am making a motion that we amend the current proposed vision.
Okay. The clerk will require that in writing as per a new procedural bylaw.
Sure.
But I think you need to give direction on what it will be
Yeah,
amended to.
so how was the first version I spit out about the rooted in Cornwall is a diverse and progressive community where residents and partners thrive through access to financially responsible and sustainable municipal services and infrastructure that are rooted in, so our services are rooted in a commitment to strengthening the quality of life, and where all feel welcomed and safe.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Good? Okay, we're debating the motion. I want to recognize Katie Wells.
Yes, please, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So first, I would like to highlight a mission and vision statement is very important part of a strategic plan, and it is something that was discussed at the session. Council was very clear that the wording of the vision and mission statement was important. Council did not want, kind of fluffy filler words. We wanted to be very methodical, and so you'll notice in the mission and vision statement that is here has very specific wording that these are verbatim words that were used during the session. Vision and mission statements are short. They're not lengthy, and so we want to keep them concise and pointed. So I just kind of wanted to add that on. I know council has had about a week to reflect on the report and document, so I just wanted to note that as well. It's certainly the first I'm kind of hearing some feedback on the mission and vision statement, but again, I just want to emphasize that it is reflective of the discussion that took place on November 4th.
I just want to take a moment to give Ms. Wells a lot of credit and kudos for the hard work into recording all of our thoughts on November 4th and coming back with this report and providing us with a vision statement and mission statement. It's not an easy thing, and certainly this is a lot of work that has gone into this, so thank you, Ms. Wells.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a screen that is constantly flashing where all the other screens, it's going to be quite disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah, rather than just not be here.
It's playing with my ADHD.
ADHD. I think we all have that. It is a criteria for an elected official.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're debating the motion. Any comments on this? Councillor McDonald, then Councillor McIntosh.
I confess I'm one of those people who don't really care all that much, but I'd certainly love to see the phrase quality of life as the touchstone in the vision and mission statement. Any way you want to put it in.
Oops. Thank you. I actually had Councillor Gunjo on my speakers list, so I'm going to go to Councillor Gunjo, then Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but it was not about the mission and vision, so can I go?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I thought we were debating the mission and vision.
Mr. Mayor, we're debating the mission and vision, yes.
I know we are, but typically, even though we have a debate, I return to the speakers list. This is something we've always done. I mean, I can hold your spot for later, but in the past, this is how we proceeded.
Okay, so.
I don't see a reason to change that.
Okay, so thank you very much for this well-drafted strategic plan, which I hope will be implemented in its entirety. I would like to make a few comments, but here I'll start with the first one. I would like to make sure that we could have a regular evaluation of the progress made in this action plan, so the council can have an overview of this strategic plan at each meeting. Is it something that you agree or you open with?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically what has been done in the past is that staff provide council with a very in-depth update every 6 months on the strategic plan. That being said, councillors will notice that in your agenda package, in your reports, there is a section for when we are completing our reports that says, I'm not going to say it verbatim, but it's like strategic priority implications. And that's an opportunity for staff to indicate how that report to council does fit in with this strategic framework. And that is on every report, every council agenda. So I think we try and take a tandem approach. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, quite enough. Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the university project in Cornwall, I would like to mention that this approach is a part of the fight against poverty in our community. Indeed, international bodies such as the World Bank and UNESCO connect the level of education of a population with the level of wealth of this population. In other words, wealth and well-being are lasting in communities with a high level of education. So this is what we are expecting to our community here in Cornwall. Finally, I fervently hope that this strategic plan is fully realized, but with a lower financial cost, so that our resident should feel the lowest possible fiscal impact in their pocket. So these are the remarks that I wanted to bring, speaking to your strategic plan that I really, really appreciate and support. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to wrap up after the comments on the motion. Is this the appropriate window?
No, I will come back to you then. I have Councillor McIntosh, then Councillor Good.
Did I miss something? I thought we were debating the motion.
Yeah,
We were talking about the motion.
Yes, you are.
We were talking about Ottawa U and...
Again, as I said, like typically when we, even with a motion on the table, mayors have returned to the speakers list that is existing.
Okay, I can't even repeat the motion because I lost track of it. I'd rather see it on the screen. There's no rush for this.
Yeah, I could send it to the clerk right away. Yeah. No, just wait. Okay. Oh, apparently, we have a different version of it coming from Councillor Good. Want to send that to her?
Oh, I'm sorry, you have a different version of the motion you removed?
Not the motion, just the. I'll send her what I have, and then we'll work from that.
Okay. Councillor McIntosh, do you have comments on it?
On the vision? Or the, what?
On the motion?
On the motion. No, I just said I'd like to see it up on the screen. I cannot repeat.
And Councillor Hebert, you're sending that to the clerk right now?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes, tops. Carry on.
I'm going to go to
Thank you.
Councillor Good and then come back to you, Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. In just keeping with debating the motion on the table, I'm going to try and stick with that, although I've got lots of comments about how wonderful this operational plan is. So to no discredit of Mrs. Wells, this is wonderful. I agree with Councillor Hebert in that for myself, when I read the mission and vision, it felt like the safe and welcomed came after. It seemed like an afterthought. And as I interpret the wording, and you could wordsmith things a thousand different ways, so the content is good, but I feel the prioritization of putting the safe and welcomed at the beginning of the statement gives it more power. And if I may propose a friendly amendment to a subtle adjustment to that wording that was proposed, could I read my suggestion?
Sure.
Cornwall is a diverse and progressive community where residents and partners feel safe, welcomed, and enjoy a high quality of life supported by access to financially responsible and sustainable municipal services and infrastructure.
Okay, I'm going to propose that perhaps, because there's different variations being proposed now, it may be more prudent to propose a notice of motion with some options that can be debated at the next meeting of council after everyone has had a chance to read over them, as opposed to trying to do it tonight, because I think with different amendments and everything else, it's going to get confusing and complicated, and then we can have it ready to go on the screen so we can read it and be prepared.
Point of order, Your Worship. Could we have a motion to defer the whole report pending mission statements? I mean, as an option, but I'm not sure. I'm not prepared.
I don't even know what that means.
A motion to defer is always in order,
I don't even know what that.
but I'm going to go to the mover of the motion first.
So I was under the impression we couldn't defer this. It had to be done today because we're going into budget tomorrow. Remember how 2 weeks ago I tried to defer this to next month? So if we simply defer the mission and vision, but everything else is approved, does that satisfy administration? It just means we wouldn't be able to do any kind of major promotion of the strategic plan, although both versions have been sent to the clerk now, I think. That could be put on the screen now. And I guess if I can make a comment, the reason I hadn't reached out earlier, it's because I didn't think once an agenda was published, we could make changes behind the scenes, had to be done kind of in council, right? So, could we defer strictly the mission and vision? And the rest could be approved today, because the rest is fantastic. Which I should have maybe led with, I think I did. It's fantastic, and it just needed a bit of tweaking to the mission, and Ms. Wells has done incredible work on this. And I could be the only one that feels this way around the mission. What's in green is what is been proposed as an addition. Sorry, the tones are different and dark. Sorry.
We gotta make that like way bigger.
Way bigger.
So I would say that your motion can be deferred, Councillor Hebert. The recommendation on the report is that council approve the report, adopt the pillars, strategies, and priorities as presented. This recommendation doesn't specifically mention the vision or the mission, so I'd argue that, yes, that can be approved later. But I defer to Ms. Wells and the CAO for their comments. Ms. Wells?
I'm going to have the CAO speak first.
Mr. CAO?
Yeah, we're a bit removed, like, you know, obviously things are changing relating to our timing release of reports, but we strongly encourage council, if you want to change wording for elements such as this, to reach out to us early so that we can work collaboratively. The last meeting, the item came on the floor and amended things, and it has implications, right? Because it changes the reflection that went into putting these words together. So obviously, we will follow what council is directing us, but we would recommend members of council, when there's wording changes like that, to work with us early so that we can find common agreement and support. What's on the screen, you know, it's in the hands of council to define if that's the best vision or mission change. But I do want to commend Katie and everyone that's been working to support Katie, that we tried to reflect as best as possible the retreat wording that was discussed.
Okay. I have Councillor McIntosh next.
Oh, I'm just wondering, is there a motion to defer the statement?
Hasn't been made yet.
I'll make a motion that we defer the vision statement and mission statement.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Gardner? Okay, we're now debating the deferral. Councillor McDonald and Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I support the deferral. But I also, I kind of challenge the CAO's spin there that this should go to administration early so that we can mutually work out something. This is council's strategic plan, and it's wording that we can live with. And I think I saw earlier at one point that it was going to come back to us to discuss the terms of the mission and vision. And I was pretty sure I saw that somewhere, and I'll find it in maybe previous notes. Remembered it because I dreaded it, because I hate these discussions about missions and visions. But I do fully support that we come up with something that council feels touches all the bases. But I think that's a council exercise. So support the deferral.
Just call the motion.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
I'm just trying to make something I can't say nothing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kind of promised myself I wouldn't wade into this, but why not, seeing as how we're going there. It's always been my, I hate to dismiss this kind of thing, but I think the regular average Joes and Josephines out there really don't spend a great deal of their time preoccupying over visions and mission statements. I don't mean to belittle the process, but I don't think the people who pay the bills spend a lot of their time worrying about it. I'm not going to support the deferral, nor am I going to support any of the amendments, because I think that what was put on the page here is an attempt to try to encapsulate what all councillors expressed. We all threw it out there. We had plenty of time, I suppose, to call and say, please throw this in there or add that. And so I think this is, if you will, a bit of a summation about, in terms of what everybody had a chance to articulate at strategic planning and throughout. I think this really is a reasonable mission statement, a vision statement. It says pretty much what I thought I got out of the strategic plan. So I'm not going to support amendments, nor am I going to support deferrals. I'm perfectly fine with what's on the page right now. Thank you.
Further comments? Councillor Gunjo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same sounds. I'm not going to support the motion to change the vision to make another discussion about this plan that was submitted to us today that I really, really appreciate. I think the K is what is going to be done by the administration. So here we have a strategic plan that is quite clear, crystal clear. No need to waste time, but I discussing about those words. I think we should give the green light to administration to do the job. That's just what they're asking us here. And I'm not sure that deferring or discussing about the vision and mission is going to change the life of our resident. But concretely, implementing this plan, it's what the residents are wanting for us, not more than that. So I think we should go further. It's time tomorrow we're starting discussing about the budget. So I think we should just try to accept this strategic plan as is proposed and go further. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dupel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start off by echoing what some of my colleagues have said. I'll acknowledge for sure the work of Ms. Wells and everybody who from administration who contributed to the strategic plan, including all of my co-council members. But I will support the deferral, and I don't think that, you know, having us see it tonight and having someone raise how the quality of life should be in there, I'm 100% behind Councillor McDonald. It is Council's strategic plan, and unfortunately it happens that that's noticed here this evening, and we all have lots of documents that we read through, and we all have lots of paperwork that we go through, so I don't see the issue with postponing or deferring the mission and the vision statement. I think that it should be a mission and a vision statement that we can all come together on, so I'll gladly support the deferral tonight.
Further questions, comments? Councillor Sabri, then Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting the deferral as well, and as I recall the day back in November when we had our session, and that a number of ideas were put out, and we put it out in such a way that we were looking for a certain degree of wordsmithing from our administration, but we are the final wordsmiths on the document. I always look at mission and vision statements from my past experience as it's a raison d'etre. It is also a very valid marketing statement for people that are looking for a better explanation as to why you exist and what you are about. And for those reasons, I have no qualms with this going back to the edit board. At the same time, I don't see anything that's within the document or the mission and vision statement that will be impacted with the budget deliberations that are going to get underway. What I'm saying here is this can be put together after a budget is passed. This could be put together last November. So the deferral at this time, because there's no agreement as to what we as a council want to express as to our mission and vision, is worthy of a deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Well, after listening to the comments by my colleagues, I think that I'm also going to vote against the deferral. The way I read this vision statement is, you know, as stated by Ms. Wells, was that it's got to be short and and concise, and I think it captures everything that was in the other two versions I just heard, just with a fewer words. And I don't necessarily think that the fact that who feel welcome and safe at the end makes it any less meaningful. To me, it just ties it up with a nice bow. So for me, that vision statement says everything that I think we should be doing as a council and as a city for our residents. You know, that it doesn't say partners in there. I mean, it's residents and businesses. People that run organizations that are partners are residences or their businesses. So I don't see any reason to change it. And so I'll be voting against the deferral, and I'll hope to have this stay the way it is.
Further questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to, Councillor McDonald?
Just a clarification, we're only speaking about the revision of the vision and mission statement, because there's, I think, an earlier speaker's list about just reaction to the strat plan, right?
Yes, I'll come back to that.
Thank you.
Any last rounds? Okay, calling the vote on the deferral. All in favor of the deferral? All opposed? Okay, deferral is carried for mission and vision statement.
If I may continue on, any other questions?
If you turn your microphone on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I didn't mean to carry this on for so long. And I don't like the comments that just because I wanted to add a few words to a vision statement meant I didn't support or appreciate the incredible work that has been done by you, Ms. Wells. Please don't take the tiny couple of extra words I want to add as a criticism. I just wanted to enhance one piece, which is the most minute piece of the entire strategic plan that I know you've likely just poured dozens and dozens of hours into it. And I guess since I've already taken so much time, I'm only going to bring up one of the couple of things I wanted to question. In Pillar 1, in terms of housing, I don't see anything around the home collaboration, which stems from the Mayor's Task Force on Housing, and I think that's where the majority of the action items are now taking place. Is there a way we can at least, I imagine we're still very involved, or at least leading that effort, if that could be reflected somewhere in there?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. As many members of council will recall, the former Mayor's Task Force on Housing had several recommendations, and they absolutely are reflected in here. If we were to list them all out, like each recommendation, it would be an even lengthier document. So the vision that we were going with was that inherently all of those recommendations are in this report. And what council will see is reference to various master plans and plans in this document, and we're very cognizant of the fact that, again, this is council's strategic plan, and we will have to make sure that that overall vision is reflected through any work we do. So,
okay.
In short, yes, it is reflected.
I was just under the understanding that all of those recommendations then now fell under the home collaborative, but if they're not, then that's fine. Thank you very much for all of the work you've put into this, Katie.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I too want to second all the comments that have been made about how much work, obviously, you and Ms. Wells have done on putting this strategic plan together. Compared to our last strategic plan, where there might have been 20 operational ideas, you must have maybe 100 here. Like I just tried to do a quick page count, but I'm sure there's probably 100.
I know the exact, it's not quite 100, but
close, a lot. So what I want to see, though, well, first of all, I want to establish, I agree with Councillor Sabaran that there's no conflict between the strat plan and our budget, because our strategic plan, I've said this before, it's more aspirational. I mean, we have here that we want a university. There's nothing about that in the budget. So what's in the budget is going to happen. It's what we're committed to. And the strat plan is what we aspire to. So with regard to something like that, the university, for example, this council did like 2.5 to 3 hours worth of work. There was this major committee. The leaders of it, Tom and Gail Kaneb and Jerry Benson, went to see the Governor General. They made a presentation to the Ontario Cabinet. They did so much spade work, and we gave quite a bit of money as a council. So it's not like we're starting at page 1. Like, we've got a few years in on working on that. And so for heaven's sake, we need to have a sense that some of these things we're in the middle of, and maybe they're 50-year objectives, because until we have a population of something like 500,000 people, we're not really in competition for the universities that the government has no intention of planting anywhere in the province right now anyway. So, I mean, kind of a hard look at something like that, I think, is important. So we have to sort of sort through these things and see where historically we've been to see where we are before we can say this is our objective. And another one, that I feel very deeply about is the Truth and Reconciliation, the calls to action. The last council actually began the work, so when we say we're going to deepen our understanding, we're beyond that. We started some action, and really, considering that this was a 2015 challenge, it's time to act. It's overtime. So we had that first session with the First Peoples, which was for council, and then the next one was going to be for council and admin, I believe, and then the third one was going to be for the population at large. So we're already kind of, we're past first base on that. So I guess at some point, maybe there has to be some sifting. Maybe you want to call a committee or something to see where some of these objectives have already gone. And like the dog park, there've been some discussions about that. So these aren't new, and it's wonderful that these ideas don't die. So just want to say that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your comments. Certainly don't want to give the impression that all of that wonderful work that's been done is missed in the plan. And I think part of what you're highlighting is how strategic plans are living documents, right? The last plan has some merging elements with this one, and you know, for example, with regards to the items on truth and reconciliation, I was part of that as well. So I'm very passionate about that work, and it will be reflected in those updates. This is, you know, the first version of, I don't want to say first version, but the first iteration showing what council discussed on November 4th. And then as we do updates and as we do reports, those elements will all be updated and will continue to have a flow. So certainly not to discredit or to forget the hard work that's been done, but it's to kind of reflect the sentiment and then provide those updates going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Councillor Good next.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the incredible work on this document. As I was reading through it, I was literally so excited, which doesn't happen all the time as we're reading through our council packages. So I put an A+ on here after I was done. I just filled the entire page. There are so many wonderful things to highlight in this, and I think you did an amazing job of really capturing the discussion that took place during our strategic planning. This feels like such a progressive plan, and I'm very, very excited about it. I want to highlight a few things. You know, the housing, we know that that's important, and the focus on vulnerable and unhoused. I'm going to kind of move in a few different places here. I know that it had mentioned Massey Place and being ready for the winter of 24-25. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because obviously that's already percolating.
I think I might ask Ms. Morgan to speak on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, Lisa and I will be bringing a presentation to council at the February 13th meeting to provide an update for Massey Place.
Well, good enough. We'll wait for that. This is our teaser, I guess. That's wonderful. I'm so happy about the communications and that community connections, the idea of us being a hub city. I know in our last meeting we were like, what does that mean, being a hub city? But seeing it come together, the university, the Great Wolf, the transit master plan, 15-minute service, Sunday service, regional bus service. This is something that is going to enhance our community so much and really position us towards that growth that we're looking for. We've been trying to hit that 50,000 mark forever. I noticed in here about communications and bilingual communications, and I had a question about, is Cornwall currently considering being designated as officially a bilingual city?
I can answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Mr. Seo.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the clerk is currently working on a presentation, a report that will come to council in February that will give a snapshot. Sorry about that. That will give a snapshot of the current frontline services that are offered, in which service areas and at what level. And the clerk is working on recommendations relating to functions of audit to improve our services, job designation, and so on. But we do not have a direction from council relating to increasing any levels of service. So We will provide a snapshot with a few recommendations that enable us to modernize the current practice. And I would believe that at that time, it would be appropriate to consider the future of services if changes are sought or needed.
That's wonderful, and definitely not something to jump into, but I'm very, very happy to see that being considered. Obviously, we have a very strong Francophone community, a very strong Francophone population within our community, and recently I've been in many discussions about the active offer and the importance of being able to, if you can't provide French services yourself, refer to the people who can. So as long as we're keeping that in mind and understanding where we have that capacity within our own corporation, I think that's terrific. I love the vibrant main streets, encouraging festivals and events. That's so wonderful. Of course, Councillor McIntosh, discussed the 94 calls to action, and I think that's going to be wonderful. Destination of choice for young families, professionals, and investors. We need that in order to support our aging population. Of course, we want to maintain being senior friendly. We can't do that without a working population, so I'm very happy to see that. The aspirations towards sustainability and hitting net zero are awesome. I had maybe I'm not even going to get into this, but I was reviewing the Climate Action Plan core pillars, and I'll bring that up when it comes time. Future City Hall. Future City Hall is mentioned in here, and I'm sure, again, like other things, that's probably going to come to us, but are you able to give us any insight into what kind of conversations are happening?
Absolutely. We're working closely with the through Mr. Mayor. We're working closely with the mayor on defining the infrastructure, the standards that are needed within the existing building, and also looking at a landscape of locations, buildings within the community that could be adequate. Mm-hmm. This is not a near-term project, would require a number of approvals by council. But we're signalizing as management the importance to do a due diligence on the future of your current city hall, and if the site is to have a longer window than the next 5 to 10 years, then significant investments to comply with fire code, AODA, asbestos remediation, washrooms, elevator upgrades, for example, would all be a significant part of the landscape.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And the last thing I'm going to mention is just the aspect of being an employer of choice. I hope that all of the staff and administration here at the City of Cornwall are proud of their jobs, and I know it's a hard job, and you get a lot of flack from the public. We hear it, but I know you hear it at least as much as we do, and so just to commend our staff on the hard work that we do, and I hope that we can really foster a positive culture here where people want to work for the city, and I know we do, but we can continue to bolster that. This is excellent. I'm so happy with it, so thank you very much for all the hard work that was put into this.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to elaborate on the CEO's comments about the future of City Hall. It's one of those things. So if I can draw comparisons right now, we're in the process of building a new fire hall. Our municipal works yard is under development. There's been talk about a new police station. So we're talking about infrastructure. A lot of these buildings are quite old at this time. This includes this building. So it's setting up a plan, as the CEO mentioned, 5 to 10 years. I'm thinking personally more in the 10-year range for the future of infrastructure. That we're building a lot of buildings that we have to replace our buildings at the same time, and that puts a huge burden on any municipality. So if we plan accordingly, when it's time to replace this building, we'll be ready to go down the road, and then we can start getting in that pattern. It ties into the asset management plan, et cetera, so we can move forward there. So while it's there, it's not necessarily a tomorrow project. It's long-term planning. Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah. When I think of replacing City Hall, I think of all the times I've walked by Kingston City Hall. What was it, built in 1867 and it's still operating? So nobody in Kingston's talking about a new City Hall. A couple of observations. The university, we spent over $100,000 trying to get a university. I think Carrie Lynn was on that committee, and Ottawa University wasn't interested at all. In fact, I have a document at home, and I'm going to dig it out to the files, that was produced in about 1980, 75, that pointed out that Ottawa U told the local committee there'll never be a university in Cornwall. We don't want one, and we're going to fight it. So it's going to be a struggle. The dog park study, didn't we have 2 already? I think we've already done studies on the dog park.
Mr. Fawthrop, do you want to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we haven't. We had budgeted for one, and then there was a reshuffling of priorities for waterfront, and so those funds were used for something else. It will show up within the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
To do a study to.
I'll
select
speak
the
on it then
location.
when it shows up in the
Sounds
budget
good.
time. Why we have to spend $50,000 for somebody to tell us we should be fencing in a dog park at Lamoureux Park. What was this other thing too? Saw something about the Portlands. Here it is. Advanced Portlands Development Project. What's happening with the Portlands? I haven't heard a thing. They haven't even got a sign up there yet. I hope we're going to get a report on, maybe from the committee, our committee members, that what's happening down there, which is nothing, really. I drove by the other day just to see. It's the same as it was 2 years ago. So maybe somewhere down the line, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to provide an update during the portion of the
Yeah,
meeting
okay.
tonight, reports from committees, and give you an update on that.
Oh, okay.
I was
That's-
planning on
you're
that
ahead of
anyway.
me. You tell these military guys, they're right on top of things. Okay, that's, just want to point out a couple of those things, that it's the university thing and the dog park study. Okay, fine.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
I just gotta ask, sorry. What exactly does a dog park study do? Like, I have a dog. I don't think he just runs around sniffing stuff. So why do we have to spend 50 grand on a dog park study when we could just put up a fence in a vacant lot and let them do what they do? Or am I missing something here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be to develop some conceptual designs for a few locations, and then
Conceptual designs.
and then do a public consultation.
What exactly is a conceptual design for a dog park? Like, do we have play structures and stuff, or?
It would determine appropriate sizes and configurations, and then propose a few different locations for the public to provide comment on.
Okay. As far as the university thing, Your Worship, personally, Ottawa U had a university back in the 70s here, offered 5-degree programs, full degree programs, and as soon as they ran out of money, they packed up and left. So there's nothing wrong with pursuing it. On a personal note, I would much prefer us to see a Polytechnical Institute, because I think it meets the needs of our community far better than a university. I mean, I like universities. I went to university. They were wonderful. But just wearing, to me, and I would just assume see, let's say, St. Lawrence campus evolve into a Polytechnical Institute, kind of a standalone facility, rather than affiliating with somebody else. Because as I said, it seems like even St. Lawrence College, when the money runs out, they pack up and go back to their main campus. So whatever. As far as the plan goes, it's exciting. I like the idea that it's an action plan and not just a lot of warm, furry kind of stuff, that there actually is. I also like the ideas that I'm particularly keen on the fact that there are timelines set in place, first quarter, second quarter, that we can realistically say, okay, third quarter, here we are, what's going on with this. So that I really, really appreciate. I'm looking forward to seeing how the next 12 months shake out. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Gunjo afterwards.
Thank you. I play golf in Morrisburg, and they have 2 beautiful dog parks there. One for small pups and one for large pups. So it'd be nice to see the same thing as they have in Morrisburg, because they're really well used. That's all I have to say.
Councillor Gunjo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As I said, very, very nice and strong strategic plan. So thank you very much for this work. And thank you for all the items that you want to accomplish for our community. Regarding the university project that I brought on the table due to a discussion that I had with the president of University of Ottawa, I am very happy that this item is presented in your plan, and I really enjoy the fact that a number of members of the council here is interested about this point. I hear some point of view that I really respect. And I am aware about what happened a few years ago about university in Cornwall. I'm aware about the history of our community, about history. I know that. But here's a fact. Our resident, our population is changing, and we have to wake up. We have to open our eye. We have to answer to their need. We need to attract more industries, and to do that, we need to have residents educated. That is the plan. A university in Cornwall is a way to fight against poverty. That's it. It is true that our history and the relationship with the University of the University of Ottawa, sorry, I'm making a small journey in the future speaking about University of. So it is true that we had few relation, or we tried having a university here in Cornwall dealing with University of Ottawa, but that is the past. And I think that today we have a progressive council. Our residents need more on different, they have different needs that we should understand, and we have partners, companies that need people qualified. And we are fighting against poverty. So trying to educate or to bring a university in Cornwall is a way to answer to this need. And I hope that when we'll start discussing about this, my colleague will share the point of view. But actually, the fact is that I start a process with the University of Ottawa. The mayor were involved with Councillor Todd, and discussions are very good. We're not going to kill this project in the egg. No, I think we should be more open and progressive, and just expect that this new opportunity for our community is going to shine for our community. So thank you very much for your plan, and I hope we're going to accomplish all this. Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Okay, I need a motion on the table. Councillor Good, are you moving the recommendation? Okay, seconder. Councillor McIntosh. Any final debate? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Wells. Madam Clerk?
Next portion of our agenda are the inquiries, and we have none. And now we are at reports from committees, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many of you may know, I am the councillor appointee to the Social Development Council. We had our board meeting this week, and the list of things happening is massive, so they're written down in front of me here so I don't forget anything. Tomorrow, the SDC is hosting an employer breakfast. It's the first of a three-part series called Mind Matters. It's the first in this series is a panel discussion on prioritizing mental health in the workplace. Tomorrow's event has already reached its capacity, but stay tuned for part 2 and part 3, where they'll focus on mental health, stigma, stress, and anxiety in the workplace. The City of Cornwall is also, as we all know, was successful in receiving Building Safer Community funding from the Public Safety Canada. The funding allocation was put into place, was put in place community-led projects to combat gun and gang violence. Given the escalating police-related incidents involving the youth, our community has recognized the imperative need to concentrate on the youth demographic as a preventative measure against future gun and gang violence. As the program must be community-led, the SDC has been engaged to manage these initiatives for Cornwall. Thanks to these funds, the SDC, in partnership with the Cornwall Area Chamber of Commerce, will be hosting their first Youth Engagement Fair on April 20th from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Civic Complex. The objective of the Youth Engagement Fair is to establish a platform that empowers and enriches the lives of young individuals. This event aims to foster physical well-being by promoting participation in sports and recreational activities, while also encouraging community involvement and volunteerism, instilling a sense of social responsibilities. Vendor registration will be live later this week. The SDC also has launched the second round of Building Safer Communities micro grants. The grant is open to organizations looking for funds necessary to initiate a new program or sustain an underfunded service related to the prevention and intervention of youth crime. Also, planning for the 2024 job fair has begun. The employer registration will be live by the end of this month. This year, the region's largest job fair is taking place on Wednesday, April 24th at the Cornwall Civic Complex, featuring a focus on skilled trades and with Skills Ontario. In order to prepare employers for this job fair, the SDC, in collaboration with the Choose Cornwall team, will be hosting an employer summit in March with a focus on hiring newcomers, modern hiring practices. There'll be more information coming on that very soon. And finally, thanks to a sponsorship, and forgive my French, thanks to a sponsorship from Le Centre de Santé Communautaire de l'Estrie, the SDC is bringing together community partners to host a workshop called Secure Social Media, empowering parents to navigate online safety with youth. The workshop will focus on equipping parents with the knowledge and tools to recognize signs of danger, particularly concerning human trafficking, internet child exploitation, the issues related to healthy relationships, and bullying. To ensure the workshop is accessible, the parents and guardians will be hosted in 4 locations across the region. In Cornwall will take place Thursday, March 21st at the Cornwall Public Library and virtually. Each workshop session is scheduled from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and will feature childcare and youth activities to keep the kids busy with a complimentary meal for both parents and the children. So that is a very, very busy month coming up 2 months actually coming up for the SDC.
Okay, thank you. Further updates? I'm happy to provide it. Okay. So, Councillor McIntosh. So for the Portlands Committee, I do want to provide an update. The Co-Owners Committee held a strategic planning session this past Saturday. I was joined by my colleagues, Councillor Good, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Hollingsworth. We were joined by our counterparts in Akwesasne, and we came up with our strategic plan and direction for the Portlands, the former Harbourfront lands. I'm relatively new to the committee, having only been there been on the committee for a year. Councillor Bennett's been there longer than myself. But the feeling coming out of that room amongst the co-owners was that we have a direction. The strategic plan will be a public document once it's finalized. It still needs to be refined and put together. But it does seem like we have a plan forward and the goals we set are achievable. So stay tuned for that. That will be released shortly for public reception and review. That's all I have right now, but I think it's progress.
That's good to hear.
Further updates from committees? Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
There are no notices of motion and no resolutions, Mr. Mayor. So if I may read the motion to go into in-camera. Motion to move into closed meeting to address matters pertaining to Section 239 of the Municipal Act. Our first report is an agreement, which the exception is information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by
Council, the clerk is just confirming we're not broadcasting, so we'll just need a minute or two to confirm that. I don't know if this is an in-camera item, but I believe it's Councillor Hollingsworth's birthday today. Yeah.
Now you're on the spot. Happy birthday. I'm not saying happy birthday.